than swift.
They've done it again, right? They've done it again. South Africa, Wankhede and runs. You could have very nearly changed it to 400. Looked like they would get to another 400. Didn't quite get there, but 382, I think they'll take away 382. Just the 383 runs needed for Bangladesh to go out and get their second win in this World Cup. But thank you so much for joining us on Maruti Suzuki Arena Presents ESPN Cricket for Matchday. I'm joined in studio by Shane Bond and Cheteshwar Pujara. Cheteshwar, 383, easy. So easy.
They're making it look so easy, but I think, credit goes to the way South African team paced it up, because Bangladesh got off to a good start. South Africa lost a couple of wickets early, but from there to build it on, Quinton de Kock and Aiden Markram, they studied the innings, and then towards the end, Henrik Klaasen, I think the way he's batting, it looks like he's making it look easy.
Here's the beauty of this innings. Like, whenever if I step back and I see someone has to score 400, I'm thinking you're going slam bang in every phase. This wasn't the case. That first phase belonged to Bangladesh, then came the rebuilding phase. You were pretty much under 6, but you still covered it up and reached 382.
I think there's a couple of things. It's taking some wickets in hand into the last 10 overs is important, and then someone batting through those 10 overs makes the difference between getting, say, an 8 an over to a 12 plus an over, and we've seen that with most teams. If Klaasen in particular, if he bats through the last 10 overs, South Africa can score anything. And think back to the India-New Zealand game where all of a sudden New Zealand lost wickets and had 2 new batters. And it goes from what potentially was 80 to 50. And so that's what South Africa are doing so well. And take a brave team to win the toss and put them in there.
Still can't get over it. Still can't get over it. But we keep talking about England and how they're changing the game. They're not too far behind with the way they're doing it at the highest level of the game now.
Definitely not. I think the kind of approach they have, but they are doing it smartly.
Yeah.
If you look at their batting, I mean, it's not that they are just going after the bowlers from first ball onwards. There's thought process about it. They know when to accelerate. They know when to build the partnership, who are the bowlers to target against. And I think they are doing it really, really well. As Bondi was saying, that if you don't have enough wickets in the last 10 overs, then you're always in trouble.
Yeah.
So they are ensuring that even if their run rate is not on the higher side within 40 overs, they can always make it up in last 10.
Yeah, to put it into context, at the end of the 40th over, 238, and we're thinking, okay, Bangladesh, if you restrict them to 300, 320, you would say job well done.
Yep.
But it wasn't the case to be. I think 140 odd runs that have come in the last 10 overs.
Which is probably an indication of outstanding batting, but some pretty poor execution and decision making in the last 10 from Bangladesh. Sitting and watching that, I thought they had no sort of look of a plan. They didn't really have an understanding how they were going to shut down a player for any sort of length of time. And then when you go into a situation at the death and that happens, it can unravel, and it certainly unraveled today.
Yeah, so what do you do at that time, Shane? When it's not working for you, are you looking at the big guys in the squad saying someone take charge, or quickly send a message out from the dugout that this needs to change now?
That's where your captain comes in. I mean, if you look at good captains, at the back end of an innings, they'll be spending most balls talking to the bowler about what are we going to bowl right now? What's the ball that we need to limit the damage? And that conversation is always happening. It's every ball is an event, and you need to keep your bowlers calm. I don't think once we saw Shakib go over to a bowler at all. All your planning should be done, so there should be some sort of understanding of what the plan is. But you still need that leadership on the field to keep everybody calm and clear about what's going on. Owen Morgan's the perfect example, and his calmness as captain, always talking to bowlers, just didn't see any of that leadership today.
You were saying this in the build-up to the show as well, when we were off air, there's no follow-up ball. If you've done well in one, what happens in the next one? And
also, there wasn't any clear game plan, because when they were trying to restrict them, the only ball it looked like was they just wanted to execute their Yorkers, which they were not able to do it. But if you can't execute your Yorkers, what are your other options? And they bowl one good slower ball, but the follow-up ball has to be better than that. You need to outsmart the batter. You can't keep bowling the same ball again, because the batters are expecting the same ball. So I thought, they should have had a better planning, because if your A ball is not working, what is another option?
My point being that if your captain is your biggest player, undoubtedly, Shakib Al Hassan, you would expect him, given the amount of cricket that he's played, given the situations that he's faced, given the teams that he's played with, that you'd expect him to do that naturally. But that not coming from him, who else then stands up and says, look, I'm taking charge. Come, let me tell you what to do.
Well, that's the feeling sometimes is that a senior player, an experienced player, a great player naturally makes a good captain or a good leader. That's just not necessarily the case. And leadership is also a learned skill. You've got to try stuff, practice stuff. It doesn't matter who it is. You just need someone out there to make a decision. It could have been a Mr. Fazur, but if he's bowling, he probably needs someone supporting him as a senior bowler. What you do need, though, is some strategies in place to manage it, to make sure that those decisions are being made and you're making the right decision. Doesn't mean that South Africa wouldn't have scored 100 runs, 100 and whatever, but you shouldn't be going for 140 as an international side, and I think that's probably, from their perspective, pretty disappointing.
Do you gauge something into how Shakib Al Hassan operates just by the way he bowls himself? You see the 10 overs there, but when the situation is getting tough, Mehdi Hassan, where are you? Shariful, where are you? Then possibly you think, okay, Shakib Al Hassan, here I come with an over.
Look, he could have been smarter with his bowling changes for sure, because he bowled an over against Quinton de Kock, which went for more than 20 runs, and at that wasn't the right time for him to bowl.
That started it,
And I thought he could have bowled a seamer. I know their seamers haven't been bowling really well, but that's when you need to show a bit more faith, because you know, as a left-arm spinner, you can't restrict yourself against someone like Quinton de Kock, who is, you know, trying to take you on, and especially at the venue where you know the stats are, as a spinner, it's not an ideal pitch to bowl for a spinner. So that's when I think he could have been smarter. And apart from that, I think, as Bondi was saying, the communication could have been better. He should have had some inputs to the bowlers, because when the bowler is under pressure, they don't know what to do, and that's when the feedback is really, really important, because when you are put under pressure, you need some guidance, you need some feedback. Although, even if you are not able to do the right things, what are the other options? I mean, if they might have discussed about bowling Yorkers in their game plan, but that is not working. So what can you do next?
Because Shane, you know this ground so well. Even if you end up, you know you're conceding runs. This is the batsman's day and you've got that team in front of you. Even if you restrict them to a 340 as opposed to a 380, that dressing room right now will be a lot more different.
Yeah, in Wankhede you have to fight for every run. You just can't go. And you've got to accept that there are going to be big overs, but you hope a big over is perhaps 12, it's not 22. And you have to just hang in there as a bowling team and scrap and fight. And as you said, that 40 runs, or in a T20 game, it might be the difference between 200 and 220. If you can keep a game to 200, you feel like you're well in the game. And it just looked like it all unravelled. And in the end, it was almost like submission from Bangladesh. And as you said, if it was 340, we'd be having a different conversation. We'd be thinking, well, if they get a good start, you never know. Now it sort of feels like, well, how close are they going to get?
Yeah, because as a batsman, I'm guessing you're thinking, Litton Das is thinking, how long do I have to keep on at it to get to 380? There's one thing is to chase 380, is to have actually done it in the past. If you haven't done it in the past, you don't really know the ins and outs of how to move around it.
Even if you have done it in the past, I think it's never easy chasing 380, no matter what kind of pitch you are playing on, even if it's the flattest track in the world. Chasing 380 requires a lot of skills, and you need to get off to a good start. And looking at the Bangladesh team, I mean, it'll be a tough task, because although even if they get somewhere around 70-80 without losing too many wickets, you still need that tempo, and you don't have those finishers towards the end. I think it's first 40 overs which are really crucial for Bangladesh. If they have some wickets in hand in last 10 overs, that's their only chance, I would say.
Cheteshwar for the win. Come on, go positive, Cheteshwar.
I think it's unlikely.
I think so. Let's talk about Quinton de Kock now. 150th ODI, and what a way to bring in his 150th ODI by getting 174th, third century in the World Cup. Now moving on to become the highest run getter in the World Cup, retiring after this 50-over format. And when you were looking at that innings, Shane, there were phases in that innings where we kept on asking, are you going a bit too slow? Because you've got a Miller, you've got a Klaasen. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Maybe you'll touch 400. But it worked out eventually in the end for the team and for Quinton.
I think, and on a flat wicket on a good surface, and in 50-over cricket, you've got more time than what you think. It only takes a couple of big overs, and what can be a 5.5 can all of a sudden be at a 6.5 run rate. And this is Quinton's sort of home away from home ground. He understands the conditions. He understands the bowling attack he was facing. The Bangladesh was short on quick bowlers. So they're the conversations you're having as a batting pair. Who's going to be bowling soon? Who can we target? And that's what he did perfectly. It was a perfectly timed innings. He's, I think, the 16th man to 20 hundreds in one-day cricket, averaging close to 50 at 100 throw. He's one of the greats of one-day cricket. And it's sad that he's going to retire when he's 30 years old and at his prime.
Strange, right? That he would do that. Were you surprised when you heard that decision?
A little bit, but I think if you look at the amount of cricket he's playing, and most of the modern day cricketers are inclined towards playing the T20 format. There are multiple leagues in the world, so they want to participate in that. So somewhere down the line, you just need to manage your workload.
I'm guessing
but it depends on
the body and yeah.
I think the exchange rate from the rand to the US is pretty good at the moment. So
But just looking at it as a player, Cheteshwar, seems so adept on the leg side, seems so adept on the other side as well. Where do you target him? He looks like that perfect mix of a player that has that skill, but can also use brute power when he has to get after you.
I think he's one of the best timers of the ball, especially up front. You know, even if you're looking to hit the good length, he can drive you on the up. And when there's a back of length ball, he is able to convert it into a pull shot. So margin of error for a bowler's length is really, really less. And that's what one-day cricket is all about. I think if you look at the best batters, they are good playing on the up, and when a bowler pitches it short, then they are able to pull those balls. So I thought he was impressive. He did what he normally does, but it's like a player who is capable enough of doing things, and to do that again and again is really credible.
Quality of a top-class player. What happened versus England will not be repeated. Our man before this game was no 50s in India's, just 400. So whenever you cross that 50-run mark, he's going the triple figure way.
Yep. I mean that's what happens, isn't it? That's what quality players do. You get those big scores, and as soon as you're getting production out of your top order, it just sets up that middle order. And the way South Africa are just going about piling on those huge runs, they're certainly firing out some warning shots to the other team in the competition.
No, of course, when you're talking about South Africa's 382, you'll be looking at that partnership with the Heinrich Klaasen. But what about that partnership with Markram at a situation when they pegged you back? The run rate was 5.5. I don't think they were bothered about the run rate at that time. It was just, settle down, don't lose your wicket, and set it up for, Klaasen.
I think that was the most important phase of the game, and the way South African team handled that allowed them to get to 382, because at that point there are times where other teams would want to go a little harder. They might want to push that run rate to 6 runs and over, and that's when you might end up losing another wicket, and that puts the pressure on the middle order. But I think the way Markram and Quinton de Kock batted in that situation, there was no pressure, there was calmness. They rotated the strike. Whenever there was an opportunity to get boundary in between, they did that. But I thought the middle phase, and that's what this one-day cricket is all about. How you handle those situations, the middle overs, the 10 to 40 overs. And if you look at end of 40 overs, South Africa were just 238 for three wickets. I think.
3 wickets,
yeah. And I think that's where Bangladesh also should have told themselves, we are in a good position, but how do you finish this game?
Yeah.
And that's where they went wrong.
I.e. smart cricket, like Cheteshwar alluded to at the start of the show. You look at Markram here, 60 of 69, which you would say if you're chasing 400, are you slowing it down? But no, the situation required that you do that, and then the others come in and pull those levers and really amp it up.
When you're 2 for 40, you're teetering a little bit in one-day cricket. If you lose another wicket, you're only a couple of wickets away from number 7 then, so things are difficult. And New Zealand had that the other day. They were 2 for 20 and had to build a long partnership. Once you get into the over number 30 onwards with that pair, then it just sets up the rest of the innings and flows out. I thought Bangladesh were good at the start. I like the fact they opened with an off spinner. I thought Mahadi was excellent. I thought Sharaful was really good in his first 5 overs. So for a bulk of the innings against a very good lineup on a flat wicket, for 40 overs they would have been reasonably happy with what they did. But the back end was basically flipped it over, and it was so poor that they've bowled themselves out of the game almost.
We need to talk about Heinrich Klaasen. When do we not talk about Heinrich Klaasen? When South Africa is playing, especially the Wankhede Stadium. 90 of 49. Initially when he came in, he was just aiding Quinton. Go for it, you're the set man. As soon as Quinton went, I think that Shakib Al Hassan over came at the 44th or 43rd over, floodgates opened straight away.
I think, the way he's pulling some of the shots, like the back of length ball, that is something you normally as a batter, you're not able to execute those into 6s, but he's someone who has that ability to, punish few of the balls which are looking like good balls, but now the bowlers will have to rethink about it, because you can't bowl him in his arc. If you are bowling in the stumps, he's too good. If you miss your Yorkers, he's hitting it for 6. So somewhere down the line, Bangladesh could have bowled wide Yorkers, which they didn't, and that's the reason I think he was able to punish few of the balls.
We spoke about this as well in the build-up show, where we said get Heinrich out in the 30th, 35th over, let him come out to bat. Came out around that time, and there the intelligence comes in. There is not just someone with brute force who's always going to try taking you on, understands the situation, set up a base, and then really spring off from there.
He's the most fearsome batter in the world right now, and I think the sound off his bat from Bulwang, just that cracking sound. But he's not a slogger. He's a proper batter who's an outstanding player of spin bowling. It just feels like he's going to hit a 6 and over against spinners, but then just keeps his shape. He can paddle the quicks, he can reverse sweep. He's got all the shots, but he's very balanced and methodical and very clear about how he's playing. So, you know, you have the other batters who are a little bit more extravagant.
Yeah.
When you've got a big man who just sort of stands there and imposes himself, it's not easy. But other teams have to start thinking about a way, particularly the lines they bowl him, because they can't keep
How would you do with Shane then?
Well, as a spinner, you're looking at where he stands. He stands on leg stump, so you've either got to take a chance and get the ball away from him or get right into his pads. And the same at the back end of the innings. And I look at it a little bit like basketball. The 3-point shot came in because 2 3-pointers equal 3 2-pointers. And you've got to think, I'm better to go for 4 4s than I am to go for 3 6s. And so you've got to start to think about, well, which side of the wicket do I want him to hit? Well, I want him to hit that side. I don't want him to hit me over this side. So so how do I then go about that? And I think when you looked at Bangladesh, sort of the left armers, they didn't come around the wicket. The right armers didn't come around the wicket. Shakib didn't bowl round the wicket to Kock. There was no changes of angles. There was nothing different offered. And I think bowlers have to start thinking like that and offering up different angles at different times rather than just going to the we're going to bowl Yorkers, because that's not good enough at the moment.
But would you say easier said than done, purely because, you know, the execution rate, if you miss by a bit,
I think
ego takes a beating, and then you think
it's not easy. Let's say these are great players, but it's not about bowling a Yorker. It's where you're going to bowl the Yorker. So if you're going to miss, you've got to hit them on the heels, because if you bowl on off stump and miss, it's 6. So you've got to be really specific about where you're trying to bowl, and you've also got to think, as a bowler, you might have 5 balls. You've got to work out, if my first ball is the Yorker, but it's his strength, maybe that's out. My second ball is a slow ball, he's not bad. My third ball is a wide slow ball. Actually, that's my best ball against him. So I've got to bowl my third best ball, because my third best ball is better than his third best shot. And then you've got to start to think about the sequence of balls and how do I use my field. That's the depth, and that's what you go to training for. That's the sort of stuff. You don't go to training just to have a bowl. You go to have a training to practice these skills, think about your fields, practice it, get feedback from your mates in the nets, so that you go in really clear about what you need to do and marry it up against the batsman that you're bowling against.
And it'll be interesting to see Klaasen's stats. I mean, the area where he scores the most, and I'm guessing it's on the leg side, whereas not many teams have started bowling him wide out outside the off stump. And that's where I think it could be a slower ball wide outside the off stump. It could be a slower bouncer. It can be a Yorker as well.
I guess that risk factor is that even if I'm going to go for a 6, this is my best opportunity to go for a 6, because 6 and possibly gives me one opportunity, and that way I send him back.
Yeah, I think that's the thing though, is that like sometimes it's the game is, it's great to get him out, but they're not mutually exclusive. We saw him get out to a slow, wide ball. That's how he got out. So it would have stopped him scoring, but it can still get players out. And I think you've just got to be smart. Good players are going to score runs, but you've got to play the odds a little bit. I always think about death bowling as you're playing the odds. You're trying to put the odds in your favour and make it as hard as you possibly can for these players to score runs. And when you look at a Quinton de Kock, you know, almost all his 6s are over the leg side. So where would you bowl? You bowl on the offside. And so, as you said, you'd take a 4 rather than a 6, and you just didn't see that from Bangladesh consistently.
South Africa done and dusted, 383 for Bangladesh. Let's talk a bit about Bangladesh's chase. Firstly, all the best. We wish you the very best in this chase, because Cheteshwar, you're going to need it, right? At all phases, for a team that really doesn't play like South Africa, that has a very different way of approaching the 50-over format, you've got to be on the money.
You have to be, but the last thing what Bangladesh would want is bat like England, because they didn't start well. They lost, they kept losing wickets. That's where I think they have to be a little smart. I know it's a tough task, and they have to, you know, score runs in the power play, but still the ball might do a bit under lights, and that's where, even if they are in 5 overs, even if they get 25 runs without losing too many wickets, that's when they start putting the paddles on, and then in the next 5, they might be they can look at another 35, 40 runs. But even at the end of first power play. If they are 70 runs without losing too many wickets, I think they should be happy with that.
Small targets, basically.
Small targets. I mean, if you get through the power play at 60, the middle overs is where you can score heavily at 1KD with an old ball, and you just try to go at 6.5 and over. And if you get then to 6.5 and over, you're at 275 with 10 overs to go. Then you give yourself a chance to get 100, because 1KD is a ground you can score 100 runs at against an inexperienced seam bowling attack for South Africa. So that's what you're hoping presents your opportunity. I think Pudji's right. You can't come out reckless. You might have to give the first 4 overs while the ball nips around to South Africa, and then just look to be positive, but don't be reckless.
Yeah, but South Africa, by the way, just to make it a little tougher for them, maximum number of wickets in the power play, which team? South Africa, 11 in 4 matches. So just once more, all the very best. Shane and Cheteshwar, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Before we leave you, let me remind you once again about the ESPN Cricinfo app. If you haven't downloaded the ESPN Cricinfo app, make sure you download it. You'll get a lot of things on that. Commentary, scores, news, views, analysis. You can follow us on our various social media handles as well. We, of course, will be waiting for you here at the end of this game at the Wankhede. Just a reminder, Bangladesh need to make 383 to win. You're watching Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricinfo Match Day.
Stunning looks, then swift,